So I've got a couple of people with their hands up that I'm going to ask them to wait because I've invited Crown to come in and speak with us, and he's graced us with his presence. So he better make it bloody worthwhile too, because he's up pretty late. He wouldn't want to be wasting his time. So I'll ask you to unmute yourself, please, Crown.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's 10:30 here.
So what I asked you to do very, very quickly, if you wouldn't mind, Crown, is just to let people know very quickly why we should listen to you.
Well, everyone's born with a crown, and they captured everyone's crown from New Zealand and been administrating it through crown entities and corporations.
And what's the source of your information?
I've just posted some information here in relation to where it's referred to in the Bible. See, when they talk about His or Her Majesty, King or Queen, and whatever the first name is, it's still the straw man. So in the Bible, they created this relationship to bind those kings in chains. So you'll see it if you open up that PDF file up top there. The New Zealand Law Commission elaborates on how those kings are bound in chains through legislation, and that's what's binding on all of you. That's the problem you're having with. It's to bind you, but it also, once you know how to utilize it, you can unchain yourself.
Yep.
Now, all this is operating in the name. The name is the king or the queen, His or Her Majesty, operating in the name. And in the Constitution Act here in New Zealand, in Part 1, you'll see that the sovereign right of New Zealand is the head of state of New Zealand and must claim the royal styles and titles from time to time.
Now, I'll just interrupt you for a moment, Crown. I've got a lot of noise coming through, and I'm just wondering, is it possible it's coming from your microphone? Something straight.
Could be. Oh, yes, I got you.
That's all right. Now, I'm going to say something to you. You may have heard it before, but there's a chance that you might have started the conversation way above some people's heads.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So what I'll ask you to do, we won't get you to reverse to the lowest common denominator, but see, there'll be people saying, what's this guy from New Zealand telling us about? We've got legislation here in Australia, like, so yeah, good on you, that's New Zealand.
Yep.
Why does that apply to Australia?
Because before the Australian Act and the Constitution Act, there were a lot more references to this act binds the crown.
Okay, now, was that in the 1800s or?
No, recently, 1983. But the crown is still bound in all its capacities within legislation in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
New Zealand and Australia are connected since 1835 and still are today through the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act. Okay,
so if it's applicable in New Zealand, it's applicable in Australia?
Correct. So if you go onto the New Zealand Crown Law Office website, you'll see that the Crown Law Office advises other countries, including Australia.
Okay, so they list the countries that they advise.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. And Australia is under a double tax agreement with New Zealand. Double tax agreement identifies all the resources within that country administrated from New Zealand. So once upon a time, yeah, we might have been a colony of New South Wales, but today you are controlled from New Zealand through legislation.
And can you expand on what double tax means?
Well, on the front of it, at the face of it, it means you can't be double taxed in two different jurisdictions. But hidden within it, you have the usufruct. That's military occupation. The use of all public property, and your name on the birth certificate is public property.
Mm-hmm.
Corporations are military. Police are civil military, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why once you've been in the army, you go into the police. So under these double tax agreements, you got usufruct. military occupation by corporations. That's what people are up against.
Mm-hmm.
And through your name on the birth certificate, which under the Secret Commissions Act, which I posted next, your child, the word child, and the name of the child on that certificate is an agent acting for and on behalf of the Crown yourself.
Okay.
Now, everyone was born with a crown. That was the first thing to appear at the crown birthing. So what people don't realize is that, yes, you got a lawful identity and a legal identity. It's a private and public partnership. The corporations are operating through your agency, which is the name on your birth certificate. Now, once you realize that there's actually two individuals on the birth certificate and the other individual being a private person, the Crown, then you take control of your agent, which takes control of all the agencies that are operating between yourself and your person.
Mm-hmm.
And in every act, that relationship you'll find in every act, some acts are binding on the Crown, which are of no effect and unenforceable, but acts that are binding on the Crown in all its capacities, they have to provide a remedy.
Okay, so now, having said that though, isn't it, it's up to you to make sure that you're not bound by the act or statute? Because if you don't know who you are, they can scoop you up?
All the time, every time. So in every act, here and over there in Australia, the Crown in all its capacities are operating through a hierarchy of chain of command right down to your person, and that's how they have control of you. They're called agencies.
Mm-hmm.
An agent with an agent with an agent. Just go to the Matrix. Agent Smith. You know, in the end, he had to become the agent, take control of the agency.
Yes.
So your person is an agent acting on behalf of the Crown yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
what you need to do, in a way, let's say that for argument's sake, just to make maybe paint a picture, and the picture might be wrong, we'll see. But if you said that the person was a puppet, and you need to be in the position where you manipulate the puppet to do what you want.
Correct. To direct the other agencies.
Yeah.
So all of that, every act to bind the Crown is in this Crown, this Law Commission PDF. The references to that is in the Bible. There they are there, and here's the link to that document that the Law Commission are operating out of to create acts to bind or not to bind the Crown, and the reasoning why. So there's the matrix, the controller right there. To bind their kings and chains. Okay. Now the next one I put up there is in relation to, if you open up that link, the first link, does that open up? Can anyone see that at all? No?
It's what's the name of it?
Okay, this is called, if you hit those three links, it will show you in the first link, Secret Commissions Act. Your agent is a secret commission. You didn't even know it. And in there, in the first link, it talks about a child of any agent. The child is the name on your birth certificate. See, your birth certificate's got a child on it, and then the name of the agent. Mm-hmm. This is how they're controlling you. So once you realize you're the principal, you are the Crown, and this agent, this child, is acting on your behalf, and you take control of it, then you can command all the other agencies. So there's three links there in relation to the Secret Commissions Act. All this is operating for secret commissions. Now the key word here is commission. If you're going to set up your common law court. The Crown Law Office in New Zealand operates through a commission and has commissioners. Now, I posted another document here. I'll just go down the list of what I posted, just for you guys to have a look at, to get familiar with this relationship between the Crown, yourself, and your agent, your person.
Mm-hmm.
He operates in many offices.
Mm-hmm.
And in many capacities. That's why it says over there, just the Crown in all its capacities, agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to take control of the, like in the Policing Act here, the police are an instrument of the Crown. You have to be the Crown acting through your agent to command the police.
So let me ask you a question it's outside what you're talking about, but it's not, but it is. If you were standing outside, you would have seen some of the footage that's been coming from Victoria.
Yep.
So if you were in that environment, what would you be doing? Would you be going outside? Would you be standing where the police are? What would you be doing?
Now,
and is that a fair question?
Yep. You're protesting, you're addressing the wrong agency. It's not the government.
Mm-hmm.
The government gets orders from a higher agency.
Mm-hmm.
So the ones that control the government is the Governor General. He represents the sovereign, which is your person. Now, another one that's up at that level of that capacity is the Chief Justice, the Administrator of Government. And then you have another one at the tail end of that, the Archbishop.
Is that of Canterbury or?
Of Canterbury, yes.
Uh-huh.
Church and state.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's operating under church and state.
So even though we've got these illegal corporations running, you're telling us that our avenue is still through those sort of more traditional avenues, if you like.
Well, they're the ones who control. The government is only administrators,
Mm-hmm.
executors, executive council, and trustees.
So how does that run when this government that we have doesn't observe the Constitution?
Well, when we look at the Constitution over here, it's for us to apply it.
That's right.
Yeah, but we're not applying it in our proper capacity.
Okay, because we don't know who we are.
Yes, there's a duality. See, in our Constitution, you've got the Crown and the sovereign. Only the Crown can exercise the sovereign powers.
So instead of complaining, we should be instructing.
Yes, through the right channels of command and identifying yourself correctly, and more better if it's a collective.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did. So if you look at the Constitution Act Australia 1986, it's very similar to New Zealand's.
So is that the Australia Act?
That came after.
So there's a Constitution Act 1986 and an Australia Act.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So all these Commonwealth countries, especially their Five Eyes, who are all part of the East Indian Trading Company, hence they're a company from the beginning, a corporation from the beginning, and we're talking about the roles of the Chief Justice, the roles of the Governor General. Those were all corporate roles.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all part of the corporate body under the Vatican. Vatican is still a corporation, all operating through your person. That's what gives them life, their existence as your person under those three roles. So let me just go through this next post that I've posted in relation to the oath. You know, everyone's trying to get them to give their oath of office and all of this. Well, when you have a look at the links and really understand what the oath represents, oath is just another word for a pledge, a surety. Your name is the oath, is the pledge, is the surety. So when you swear in an oath, you're giving your fealty, surety. You become the surety for somebody else. So it's not really good.
And so would it be correct that without the name, there's nothing's been said?
That's right. The oath is the name. That's why they got to ask for your name. Because in the Crimes Act here, it's an offence. Oath to commit an offence. And anyone that's administrating that is committing a crime. Anyone trying to induce an oath or compel someone to give an oath is committing an offence.
But people, generally speaking, don't realise that their name is an oath.
Is an oath, exactly. It's the surety, the pledge. They need a name to create a statement, an invoice, so they can create a charge.
So if a policeman says to me, like, what's your name? And I say, am I obligated to give you my name?
No, just give them a name, but a good name. Say, Crown. But just don't give him that name.
Okay.
He wants a name. Oh, is that the first name, family name? Is that the first name, the given name, family name, or the surname? There's 4 names on my birth certificate. Which one do you want? Give them the Crown. The Crown was the first name at the Crown birthing. The doctor proclaimed 3 times. That's the first name.
Yep. That's your first
Crown.
name.
Yes. And then you have a given name. Oh, who gave that to you? Now, when you're talking about a given name, it's an adopted name. And it belongs to a deceased person, so you're committing a crime. Hence, oath to commit offences.
So this is where we also get into the area where when you were born, you were one of twins?
The placenta, they refer to the placenta as a phantom twin. But the reference to that relationship is in the Bible. There were 2 nations born in the womb.
It sounds like a phantom menace.
Oh, he is. He's the Antichrist, the devil, the one who once lived. Devil was just lived backwards.
And then we've assumed the dead twin's name.
Exactly. And when you read the fine print, the warning and the caution on the New Zealand birth certificate, it says you cannot use it. You're committing an offence. It's using the name of the deceased person when the first name is the Crown. So in other legislation, it talks about in the Land Transfer Act through the Crown has disclaimed the estate. We have disclaimed the estate or the kingdom by using the name of the deceased person. That's how we've disclaimed it. So in the Constitution Act, it says we have to proclaim. We've disclaimed it. Now we have to proclaim it back to have our royal styles and titles. It says royal styles and titles, not a name. You can't proclaim your name. Yeah, and this is the.
So you're proclaiming your status.
Yes, royal styles and titles.
Yep.
But only the Crown can claim that. When he claims his royal styles and titles, his or her Majesty, King or Queen, the first name being the estate. See, the given name is the estate. The family name is the trust. The code's in the Bible, and in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. We have a man. So who is the Holy Ghost? Well, he's a private person. He's the Crown. So that's the thing with the oath. It's a trap. And if you have a look at those links there, you'll find something similar in legislation over there.
Yes.
Oaths to commit offence. It's the name that's the oath.
Yes.
Okay. So just traveling down, what else I posted? Oh, here we go. Now, here's the blueprint between yourself, the Crown, the royal styles and titles, His or Her Majesty, King and Queen, and the person. This is the Crown and Lands Act, 1823. This is the blueprint to this whole relationship. So have a good look at that. Then you can disseminate what has been done. You got the Crown, you got the His or Her Majesty, King or Queen, heirs and successors, and the ascension to the Crown and a private person. It's all in that act right there.
Okay, so now just to bring it back into where people can get pictures in their head. So have you been to court as Crown?
I've been to court at the side of the road.
Uh-huh.
See, when there's two or more gathered together in thy name, you have an agreement, don't you? That's the court.
Right.
So when you are facing any of the agencies that are operating through your person, the oath, the name, that's the other person that you're in court with on the side of the road. So we have applied things, especially in the Privacy Act, at the side of the road.
Yeah. So is this an inquiry under the Privacy Act?
The question is this an information privacy request? Because your information is privy.
So how important is the wording?
Very important. There's codes within the Privacy Act.
So is this an information privacy request?
Yes. And they're asking the question.
Yes.
But when you are asking the agency a question, this is an information privacy request. We've seen the agent turn. I'll give you an example. Myself and another colleague, we had appointment with WINS or Centrelink, your version of WINS over here. And we were going in there under the Privacy Act to correct our personal information. That is provided in the Privacy Act and other acts to correct your personal information. So me and my colleague, we were waiting for to be called up. The manager at the back of the office come walking up to my colleague and started yelling out in front of everyone, "Oh, you Tracy Ann Hall!" And by the time she got out the second one, the lady at the reception jumped up and says, "No, that's the agent." So they already had the script. And as soon as she said that, the manager turned around, we both stood up and walked down to the back of the office and sat down, and I said, "This is an information privacy request," and she just turned into "What do you want me to do?"
So she became your compliance servant.
Yes. So in that Crown Land Act, you'll see the private person in there. There are codes within legislation. They know specifically the Privacy Act. Just about every agency has a privacy policy. Every company has to provide a privacy policy. Why is that? Because that's where they are trading your personal information every day for every transaction. And once you activate that, they know that you're the owner of it.
Okay. So let's have a look at the practical situation we're in at the moment. Now, from what I understand, things have gone pretty heavy in New Zealand. So is there any communications that you've sent to particular parties in New Zealand to address the issues you have at hand?
We caused it all.
You caused it all.
We caused it all. The COVID-19 was legislated in New Zealand in 2005.
And was it COVID-19 or coronavirus in general, or a pandemic in general or COVID-19 specific?
COVID-19 Pacific, yeah.
Oh, that's,
So
that's a bit upsetting.
Of course. There's not this was planned way back then. So, but the interesting thing, it's an act that does not bind the Crown. So it's of no force, it's of no effect and unenforceable.
So
See,
what
that's
if you
why
got 20? What if you got 20 cops knocking on your door, thinking they've got right to enter your house? How does it come into play there?
Well, unless you know where it is and provide the information, they're still acting under their assumed authority.
Yeah.
They don't know the law. See, the police only operate under the Policing Act. That's it. But they are still controlled by the Privacy Act that overrides all those other acts. So we've shielded ourselves with the Privacy Act. So defending them at the side of the road, is this an information privacy request? And if you're asking them a question, this is an information privacy request. And if they advance any further,
sorry. So what you're doing with the second one, this is you're actually advising them that what they're doing, that this is an information privacy request. So you're making a statement.
Well, it's more.
Or you say, is
not a
this?
statement.
Is this?
You're giving them when they're asking you for your name, you ask them, is this an information privacy request under the Privacy Act 1988 in Australia?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. But when you're asking the agent for information, or when you're going to open up the dialogue with any agency, police, this is an information privacy request under the Privacy Act 1988.
Okay. Yep.
That takes you into the private.
Yes.
Private versus public.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Privacy Act here, it has certain protection against certain actions where the Crown is protected from providing whatever information they provide and the use of it. They can't use it against you.
Now, there's one thing I've noticed when you're speaking, Crown, is you're very animated, and it's obvious that you're very passionate, but you're also scraping your microphone.
Oh. I'll take the mic.
Oh, don't take it. Yeah, no, that's great. It's just because we don't want to miss a word you have to say.
Yeah. Now, another feature in the Privacy Act is interference with privacy. It's in your legislation over there as well. Interference with privacy, and gives you a whole list. This is where just even hurting your feelings is an interference with privacy. And there's
so
damages.
We can be a social justice warrior. We can be a snowflake.
Yes. People don't know where their rights are. You know, everyone jumps up and down about their rights, but where are they? What are they? They go to the human rights. No, that's your straw man.
Mm-hmm.
They go to the Bill of Rights. Well, that doesn't have any power either, because there's a private and public partnership. The Crown is a private person, and the Crown exercises a prerogative, because he was the first to appear at the birthing, and statutory powers which relates to the person.
Okay, statutory. So Crown, when you say Crown is the private person, is there any problem with saying person?
Well, there isn't. There's several types of persons. Mm-hmm. You have the person, which is like a default.
Yes.
Default for a legal person, a natural person. The legal person is the name. The natural person is the piece of paper. And you have the private person, which is the Crown.
Ah.
And in Australia...
So just to repeat that, you said the natural person is a piece of paper.
Yes, correct.
Well, that doesn't sound right. I haven't heard that before.
Yes. So there's all these variations of a person, and there's a responsible person as well in the Privacy Act. So the person is just the default, but there's all these different categories of a person.
So it's okay to be the correct person?
Yeah, private person.
Yes.
The private person is the Crown by default.
Okay, now, because I've got other things I look at as far as language is concerned, would it be okay if I put private hyphen person, making it a compound noun?
Well, the fiction can only deal with the fiction, and fiction can only listen to fiction language.
Well, there was actually a directive, I think it was a directive issued in the US a number of years ago, where complex terms, they were suggesting that complex terms be hyphenated, so as to hold them whole as a whole fact, as one whole thing. So instead of having one word modify another, they, like for example, instead of saying the red, hang on, this is going to go down.
Windmiller stuff, Russell Green stuff. Yes. I hear you. But the language is when you look at the act that's affecting you, and you're going to use that act, it's what's in the act.
Use the terms within the act.
Correct.
So we're dealing with the fiction. We're using the fiction to deal with the fiction. So don't introduce your own language into it, because you're just going to muddy the water. Yep.
You're mixing a foreign jurisdiction you can't hear.
So another thing that David Windmiller said was you can't mix fact with fiction.
That's right. See, the creatures of statute can only be moved by statute.
Okay, yes.
It's like resolutions. A company can only operate through resolutions, and creatures of statute can only hear statute.
Yeah, so they're like a diesel vehicle, and you come along and want to put petrol in it, and it's just not going to work.
It ain't going to work.
Ain't going to happen. Going to be a lot of smoke, a lot of noise, a lot of clatter. Something's going to blow up.
They can't hear you. So that's why we use legislation, and especially the relationship with the Crown and its agencies operating through your person to command the fiction. So if you were within the law,
if you found yourself in a court of law, in the actual courtroom, rather than by the side of the road, the only thing that you would answer to would be Crown?
If I ended up in there, correct. And this information that was shared through another colleague, shared with 3 individuals in Australia, they used it. One lady, she used it, and 2 blackfellas. One blackfella, he had been on the run for several years, several federal warrants out for his arrest, and it was all part of that big pedophile syndicate that was uncovered, and he got caught up in that.
Well, that might not have been a good thing to say. You're frozen. So one of the things that we really don't get is that all the acts and statutes are about us. When it mentions Crown, this act is binding on the Crown. So you can go to newsouthwales.gov, like consolidated acts, and look at consolidated acts, and then you can do a word-specific search on Crown and read the laws that are relevant to you. Because when it says Crown, put your name in, do that, and then you know that it's relative to you. And what Crown is also doing is giving us some of the founding documents, and is also put links in the chat. So if you download the chat, so go to the chat box, go to the right-hand side where the 3 dots are, click on that, and you'll get an option to save chat. So every individual can save the chat, and all the links to these PDFs are there. Also, Crown has a Facebook page, and you can go to his Facebook page, and I'm friends with Crown on Facebook, and I don't know if he knows, but I know he does copious posts. There's so much information through there, and we say, well, just put in a little book and we'll read it. We'll have a look at his Facebook page and get back to me when you get through that, because he's constantly telling people who you are, who you're not, what to look at. And it is complex. This is also why we need many people. We need as much input as we can get from as many people, because we're all going to have different facets that not specialize in, but different facets that stick better, that we're able to, and together we can master the lot. So I'll get Crown back up again. Oh, hang on, I've got ASA 8. I'll just.
Oh yeah, that's me. I had to. My internet dropped out on my.
Oh, is that Bosi?
Oh no, that's me.
Oh, that's Jane. Yes.
Oh, is that you, Jane?
Yeah, that's me. That's what my phone's called. But I'd like to say something. Sorry about that. I'm in the car, so you can't really see me.
That's
So
all right.
the line doesn't get crossed. But you get full disclosure in New Zealand legislation. There's nothing like it anywhere else in the world. I've studied a lot of Australian legislation myself, and to get full disclosure on the relationship, you need to go to New Zealand. Now, when you search in New Zealand legislation, it's very, very clever the way they've done it. You can search a word even in content, and it will display it all highlighted. But, there's so much information on the internet, and you've got to remember when you're talking in legislation, and particularly in Australia, each act, just say you're in trouble under whatever the Fines Infringement Act, or I know in Western Australia, every time there's an act that they give you full disclosure in the letter that they're taking you to court under, or whatever fine you've got, you need to go straight to that legislation, and the very first word you search, the code word is Crown. Now, if they have to pull you into court under an act that binds the Crown, otherwise there will be no effect. So I went to court myself in Perth courts, and I tried numerous things over and over and over again, and I went in there as the Crown. And they said, "Are you Jane Amelia?" And I said, "No, I'm here as Crown. I'm here to discharge the matter." And I went on. I didn't contract to that name. I said I was Crown, and they threatened to give me an arrest warrant and all of that nonsense. And I did not crumble. I said, "No, I'm here as Crown to discharge the matter." And he said, "Well, I'll enter a plea on your behalf." And I said, "Well, that's fine. You can. I'll report you for war crimes." And I got a letter from the West Australian Police, and it was even with the real signature and a name, and it was thrown out. So when you go to court, if you're in a situation like that, the only time you'll crumble is when they threaten to lock you up. Well, if they do, they can only hold you for a certain amount of time if you don't contract to that name. And it's every time you contract to the name that gets you in trouble, because you're using a deceased person's name. Because the name is a body corporate. And it's like if you've got a company, you need the living to operate that company. It's exactly the same. Your name is that company, and you need the Crown to operate it.
So they can't damage the flesh and blood, Jane?
No. But we all go in there as trying to claim our sovereignty over a deceased person, but you can never claim sovereignty until you claim your Crown. And then the Crown can claim sovereignty through its person.
So one of the things that I try and get people to consider is that when you're a person, you're a dead thing.
Exactly.
And you cannot hurt a dead thing. So they can do no wrong to a dead thing. The dead thing doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have anything. You cannot hurt a dead thing. And as long as you keep saying you're a dead thing, you're stuffed.
The best interpretation to a person, if you go to the Interpretation Act, the Commonwealth Act, I think it might be Section 5 or 2 or something.
So
and
it's
you
the
look
Commonwealth Interpretation Act.
Yeah, so the Interpretation Act Commonwealth, right?
Okay.
I can put the link up for you. And you look at person, it says a person is incorporated, non-incorporated, someone, no one, anyone. Come on. You know what I mean? A person is the deceased. Anything outside the Crown is a legal fiction. If that makes sense.
Yep. And as Crown was explaining before, there's a number of different types of person, and it's okay to be the private person, but not the natural person.
Yeah. So it just depends on the legislation that they're using, and each legislation, like each act, has a different relationship, and you've got to work out the code. That's why he's put up that New Zealand legislation, because you get the full disclosure in New Zealand law. In Australia, it's a little bit more tricky. So if you look at the New Zealand law, understand the relationship, and come back to Australian law, you'll see it. It's very clear.
So just to put things in perspective, and this might muddy the water, but I was searching for something, and this might sound like it's not related, but it is. I was searching for something once because I was told to look up my ancestry. So I was looking up a particular thing, and I actually found, I went into the back page of a senior Mason who was teaching more junior Masons Masonic law. And I found his webpage, and it was amazing because when I took all the, you know how you've got the first name, then you've got a slash, and the next name, like, you know, slash, slash, slash. When I took all that off, I couldn't get in through the front door, but I could always get in through the back door of his website. And the things that I learned things in there, and one of the things that I learned was somebody was complaining, and they were a lawyer, and they were complaining that they couldn't understand how trust law worked until they found a description of how the money moved. But where they found it was in a law that related to plumbing. So, and they explained that the money flows through a trust as the water flows through a pipe.
Yeah.
So it was in the plumbing section, and they were complaining about why is everything hidden so much, and why do I go to court and get flogged by people who quote stuff that I don't even know exists? And it's because of where it's hidden. So sometimes you've got to be a little bit creative and a little bit broader in how you think, because something might be applying to you from a different direction than what you're contemplating. So now, did you want to go ahead, Crown?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I just quickly posted all that. Sorry to butt in, but I've just posted the Interpretation Act. So the actual link to that, then this act is binding on the Crown. So I've posted that section, and also the interpretation to persons.
Thank you.
Just for your references, anyway.
Yeah. Now I can see a few of us getting together and compiling things into some sort of an order for people to start and to progress through. I think just from tonight, we've got more than enough material to study. And one of the things we've got to get away from, you want to be free? Well, don't rely on someone else to make you free. You got the links there, you got the information. And if you've got the compulsion to do it, you'll do it. If you don't, you wait for someone else to show you how or tell you how. That's not what's going to happen. There's people here that'll coach, will do what they can to help you, but unless you absorb the knowledge yourself and make it your own, you're only going to be someone else's puppet, or you're going to be the one who says, why didn't so-and-so tell me I should have said that? Well, it's up to you to work out what you've got to say. Like, we'll help, but at the end of the day, you're the one that gets locked up, or you're the one that gets beaten up. Not me, not Crown, not Jane, not Andy. It's you. And that's what this is about. It comes with great power comes great responsibility. And when you're Crown, you have great power.
Yes.
So your responsibility is to yourself.
So am I allowed to share something on screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Once I hit the correct button. Whoops, did it again. So
what gives the courts jurisdiction? I'll show you what gives the courts jurisdiction.
Okay, see if you can share there.
Okay, here we go. Can everyone see that? Parents patriae.
Yes.
This is what gives the court's jurisdiction. As soon as you appear, you just gave the court jurisdiction under parents patriae. Parents patriae, Latin, parent of his country. The country is the land you were born in, the parent of his country. An ancient prerogative jurisdiction, hence the Crown has prerogative and statutory powers. Prerogative jurisdiction of the Crown. Under the jurisdiction, the Crown had the power and duty to protect the persons and property of those unable to look after themselves. The jurisdiction was conferred by the Crown on the courts that applies in New Zealand by virtue of the Judicature Act 1908. That's what gives the power, gives the court's jurisdiction.
So you say that's as soon as you appear?
Yes. And
now
the piece of paper is the court as well.
So what constitutes you appearing?
When you're summoned or you voluntarily appear, or for any matter.
So is that if you answer to the name, or is it if you just walk in there?
If you look in the Crown Proceedings Act in New Zealand, it says the Crown can be joined to any action, whether as the plaintiff or the defendant, jointly with the defendant or the plaintiff. So when you're going into the court, and you're not knowing that you're the Crown, and you're going in as the person, you're going to get done.
So
But
if
you
you
can
haven't
go
said
in-
anything yet, if you haven't, is it the words out of your mouth that bind you?
The name.
The
Every
name.
time. The name will bind you.
So if
See?
they call out that birth certificate name and you stand up,
I'm here as the Crown, acting jointly with the estate,
mhm.
the trust, because that's what it is.
And do you name the trust?
Well, there it is there. Protect the person and property. There's the duality there. Everyone's going in as the person, as the property. They're the administrator, trustees, executors, on behalf of the Crown.
Yeah. So they're
So-
treating you as a ward of the state.
Well, a deceased person.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
a deceased person. So that's the relationship with the person, and that's what gives the court's power, is the parents patriae.
Mm-hmm.
The Crown conferred the prerogative jurisdiction on the court. You just didn't realize it when you appeared, that you were the Crown. That's why what Jane said in relation to what happened to her in court, the two other blackfellas had the same outcome because they came in as a private person, the Crown.
Mm-hmm.
Courts don't have any jurisdiction. The Crown gives it jurisdiction. Now with Queen Elizabeth, she's just a beacon for everyone to aspire themselves to, window shopping, because everyone's got the same titles as she has. It's just that she's always known this, and we haven't been educated into those roles to know what our royal styles and titles or what they are and how to proclaim them.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the Constitution Act in New Zealand. It's loud and clear, but only if you knew you were the Crown. So that's the parents patriae. So the next one here is this is Reverend Samuel Hyde's proposed bill to the Select Committee of the House of Lords. This set up councils and the Executive Council of Government. This is the blueprint. And in this part here, it refers to no power in the Crown originally. There is a power in the body requiring to be sanctioned by the Crown, but no power originally granted to the Crown. The power is in the body with the consent of the Crown. There's the duality again, private, public. So your person is the body, but the body's got no head, the Crown. So you're going in there as a dead body.
So how old is this Crown?
This is if I go right to the top, this is the
Early 1800s?
This is 1838.
Yeah, okay, because I just want to draw people's attention that I've noticed in older writings that the important words or the things that are to be taken as virtually as facts actually have a capital letter.
Now these are minutes. You can use these minutes in any judicial forum. These are Select Committee minutes from the House of Lords. And this was a petition of the merchants and ship owners of London. There's the private bankers. And it's talking about the trading in the South Seas and the Australian colonies and specifically the islands of New Zealand. Now in here, this is the proposed bill for government, the Executive Council and local governments. This is the blueprint. It was executed here and then used in New South Wales and Australia, then the rest out to the rest of the world. This is the blueprint. Now in here, they talk about improper appointments. I put it onto the chat. I loaded it up there so everyone can download the copy for themselves. But it talks about proper appointments. There's been appointments that haven't been properly made by the Crown. Now, I'll just get to this part down here. Here we go. Now, This is what's happening. The blueprint that was established in New Zealand was for the new ownership of land, the new form of bondage, the new world orders government structure. Now, most people think the national government has all the power. It's actually your local government that has more power than national government. Everyone's, and you get the national government playing ping pong with the local government. Again, you're going from one to the other all the time. So the powers in local government. So in here, they talk about, in relation to cession of sovereignty. Now we're talking about sovereignty within yourself and sovereignty as a nation. It's the same template. So what they're doing, what they've said in this report is this. But in the present instance, what is meant by cession of sovereignty amounts to this, that we purchase the right to participate in the sovereignty with them, and we do not wish to exclude them, but to pay them a price to participate in the sovereignty with them. Of course, in the first instance, the civilized man will be the only sovereign, but that is because he only will be fit and capable of exercising sovereign rights. As the savage advances in civilization, he will come in for his share. And I see no reason as soon as the New Zealander, now when we're talking about New Zealander, we're talking about everyone worldwide. Because this was the new doctrine of discovery, new and land. So that everyone worldwide, New Zealanders, as capable of it as being Chief Justice. Now you've got the government, there's a higher administrative role above that. And here we are here, Chief Justice, Governor or Bishop, or holding any other office. It is not therefore that we take the sovereignty from him. We've purchased the right to participate with him in the sovereignty, and by doing so, we enable him to become sovereign of the country, which he is not at present. And when we're talking about the country you live in, it's also the country representing the placenta, the country, land. So it's got a dual meaning, but this is the blueprint here. So what everyone's trying to achieve, banging heads with the government, there's a higher role above that that allows government to exist. And it's with the Governor General, the Bishop, Archbishop, the Chief Justice, and there's another role, the Commissioner of Crown Lands. Those sort of roles that you should be hammering. Or these roles here have been done through improper appointments, and because the Crown has the power of veto in this document, have a good read of this document. It gives you the pathway to take control of your courts and your land and everything else. It's in the blueprint. And it's Select Committee minutes of the House of Lords. Now, this is acting out in New Zealand in the Local Government Act. And I also see it operating within the Local Government Act over there. It's called a Crown Commission. See, the law society is operating for a commission. Mm-hmm. So you put your commission together, then you make your appointments, a Crown Commission. So that body you're trying to create to give effect to change, it has to be a Crown Commission made up of Crown. Then from that commission, appointments are made, proper appointments to those key roles. The Governor General controls government. The Chief Justice controls the courts. And the Archbishop, well, that's military, isn't it?
Okay, now I don't want to break across, but there's something that's just come into my head, and hopefully you can clarify it. When Gough Whitlam entered into Unidroit in 1973, how did that change the state of play?
The Unidroit, that's still just a military occupation, isn't it? Usufruct. They just had to renew the agreement. They just called it something else. Like when they amend an act, they just change the sections around and change a few wordings. But they have to do it every so often now.
So you're saying there was something that existed
like
that expired, and what he did was just reinstated it?
Yes, under a different amended version. So a Sedicate trust, that's the lifetime of a trust. So that you see that rolling over every 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
1666, that's what everyone's focusing on. But you got 1776, you got 1867 here in New Zealand, you see the Sedicate Trust, and then in the Land Transfer Act, 1852, the Sedicate Trust is in there, and then it disappears. Now, where the words that they're using for the Sedicate Trust today is called a deceased person.
The deceased person.
That's the Sedicate Trust. The deceased person is the Sedicate Trust today. So I'll post that for people to look at. There's the blueprint for local government and government.
Yep.
Okay, and the remedies in there. It's in the Local Government Act. You'll see that there should be the Crown can appoint, the ministers of the Crown may appoint a commission. Well, the minister acting on behalf of the Crown. So the Crown can do whatever it likes, can appoint or create.
So if we were to go through those, acts, we would be able to identify the entity that we should be addressing communications to.
Yeah.
If we wanted
that, or you set up your own. If you go like what we're trying to establish over here, once the people over here realise the power that they have in the Local Government Act, is a Crown Commission. The Crown Commission, made up of 3 or more individuals, that operates a Crown review team, Crown observers, and Crown managers.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's in the Act over here. That's what's in this blueprint here that hasn't been utilised. So everyone's busy conflicting with themselves through the straw man. See, the government is your straw man. That's the problem.
So the government's like a distraction.
And when we're talking in the biblical text, it talks about the elder shall serve the younger. And that's the conflict we're having, is with our straw man. The straw man is your government, your administrator. So it's self-perpetuating. It's like shadow boxing, go nowhere. But if we form the proper body to take control, the body needs a head. It's called a Crown Commission to direct the body.
So
that's all in this blueprint. Read the blueprint.
So if we've got local government, and from what I understand, so if local government, we're talking about councils.
Yes, okay.
The shires. So from what I'm told, and I don't know it as a fact myself, but that there's a shadow that the councillors that we see, they don't really do much, but there's actually a corporation behind them with a CEO behind them that runs the council. To your knowledge, is that correct?
Okay, so when everything across the board in 1983, by the directions of the World Bank, they had to incorporate they ended up having CEOs or executive officers that deal with the public side and they interface with the private side. Now all the local governments are registered under the local government funding agency. You've got a local government funding agency over there. Now, the local government funding agency here in New Zealand are made up of all the councils, which are trust districts. And one of the shareholders in the local government funding agency with the councils is the Treasury. Now, all the birth certificates are traded through the local government funding agency as bills, and over here they call them printouts. Your guys are more or less the source document, which is a version of the printout, and they're trading them as bonds. Local government is.
Okay.
And that's all operating under abandoned land. So we got our Local Government Act 2002 and Local Government Rating Act 2002. And in there it talks about abandoned land, and we go into land, it means also hereditaments, which is your inheritance. See, we've abandoned our land that we were born in, that's registered in that name. As the Crown, we have disclaimed the estate, and that's what's in the Land Transfer Act.
Okay.
Crown has claimed the estate. We gave it away, abandoned it by using the name of the deceased person. Okay,
now I'm going to break you away from that for the moment, because I think that you've given us more than enough information to forget. So we're going to have to do our best to pick up on the links that you've given us. But I want to ask you something. So through all of this and through all this knowledge and with everything that's going on, if you were able to take things in the direction that you want to go, what would things look like? Where would we be going? How would government change? Would it be the same, but we just have different entities in control? Like, what the purpose of learning all of this is to achieve what?
Okay, well, let's go back to 1066. William the Conqueror came into England with the Khazarian Jews, the bankers. They set up Parliament, That's why Guy Fawkes wanted to blow it up. There's no reason for Parliament to exist. No reason for government to exist. All you need is a board of directors. But when we got these elite families living off the gravy train, absolutely doing nothing, just arguing in Parliament against each other, and they're all participating in creating legislation that's going to destroy you. Why have Parliament at all? And that's how the bankers control everything through legislation. Every bit of legislation is a bill, and they're trading that as security. But you ain't going to benefit from it; they are.
Now, I think back then too, you had a situation with communities where there was like localities, and I understood that when Rome, now who was it they were trying to invade? The Saxons, I think. That when they were trying to take over the Saxons, they had a real difficulty in that all the major centres had many roads leading to them and from them, and they weren't able to encircle them and encompass them. So, and there was no one centralised position of power. There's many centres. And from what I understood, most of them were actually run by women as well. And where they used to say all roads lead to Rome, but when they tried to conquer the Saxons, they didn't have one road. They got sort of messed up. They had to spread their force too thin.
Well, I don't know whether you saw it, but around 83, 86, they decentralised the power. It went back to local government. So you take control of your local government wherever you're living. Take control of that local government.
So that would be our objective, to take control of the local government rather than trying to take control of the country from one central point.
Correct. Because they're all operating under the same blueprint.
Well, there's a goal. That sounds a little bit
Take
more
control of
achievable,
local
perhaps.
government.
That's a little bit more bite-sized, isn't it?
And then dissolve Parliament. There's no reason for Parliament to exist. All you need is a board of directors that's already operating. You just
If you
need to
blew
take
something up, that'd be like dissolving it. That's just a metaphor. That's just a metaphor.
No, it's in the Constitution Act, but only the Crown can dissolve Parliament.
Uh-huh.
It's
So
in our Constitution over here.
So now that we've, okay, well, so what you've given to me, and hopefully other people have got it as well, is before there was this insurmountable problem. There's this huge thing. How do we take over the whole country and do all this or do all that? But with this way, we could actually take over one local council in one area and then have it spread like bacteria, because viruses don't spread because they're in you already. So you can't spread viruses. It was a wicked thing created by some computer nerd so that they could get money out of you to fix your computer. And they already had it in there from the beginning, the same as you've already got the virus in you.
Well, it's called Corona, Crown by RS.
So they're really talking about you.
Crown by RS. Come on, people. Yeah, so over here in the 1835 Declaration, there's one council, one district that they populated from, and that's Hauraki District Council. So there would be one council over there that they established first. I believe it's in New South Wales, where they set up the first colony, and then they spread outwards. So there'll be one principal council, and they're just ships on land, and you just commandeer it through establishing that Crown Commission. When you look at what's in the Local Government Act 2002 and put Crown in there, you'll see the Crown Commission. There should be something similar to that in your act over there.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the reason why the Crown Commission is established is because of what's happening and within local government and how it's affecting the people. It's local government. It's the local government that's affecting the people.
Mm-hmm.
Not national government, local government. Take control of them.
Okay.
And that Hyde report, everything's in there. What to do.
Okay.
That's
Well, you've definitely changed my awareness of where to go. And I have to admit that it was quite muddy. It just seemed like an insurmountable problem, but we had to try. We had to go, and just through the effort of doing that, well, for me anyway, you've given me something to focus on now that seems like it could be achievable. So that's good. So is that the sort of thing that you're attempting in New Zealand?
Well, the problem with New Zealand, it's only 5 million people, and there's too many of the people who are trying to achieve sovereignty who actually are maintaining the status quo unknowingly. Okay. And they can't shift from that.
Is that because they're not aware of their role as Crown?
Well, they've been paid off.
Okay.
Paid off.
You've got a situation there, and we went through it a little bit last week, and I want to use this just to finish off because I don't want to keep you there forever because I know it's late. But where there was the two flags. So, and what are those flags actually called? What's their correct name?
Okay. The one that was chosen by the Northern tribes is the national flag.
Yep.
The one that was flown by the Southern tribes is the Royal Ensign.
Okay.
But the design on it represents the double cross.
Yes.
We were all double crossed.
Yes. But is there one of those flags that you want to fly?
Oh yes. I've got my flag because my ancestor was the grantor, the crown on that document.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my responsibility of trying to free everyone is provide all the evidence and how they did it.
And so that's the
Now,
one that's got that cross with the white border on it?
Yes, that one. That's the royal ensign. That's what gave the company authority to set up their colony down in Port Nicholson, Wellington.
Okay. So
under the Port Nicholson deed of purchase.
So now, remember that until a couple of weeks ago, I knew nothing about this. All right.
Yeah.
So I don't have an agenda with it, or I don't have a position to defend.
Yeah.
So, and it's never my intention to offend. So with the other flag, from what I understand, is it was actually flown as the national flag for 6 years, from 1834 to 1840.
Yep. Correct.
Okay. Now, the one that you're talking about was never flown as the national flag?
It was flown down in Wellington by the natives down there.
Okay.
Because of their bloodline.
So was it actually jurisdiction over a smaller area, whereas the other one was jurisdiction over both islands?
No. The one with the black was for the northern tribes,
Mm-hmm.
and the other flag was for the southern tribes. Now, when you look at the biblical context of that, we're talking about Judah and Ephraim, the northern and the southern tribes.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 12 tribes of Israel.
Uh-huh.
So that's what those flags represent, are the 12 tribes of Israel, which captures everyone.
So that's for both flags?
That's what those both flags, northern and the southern tribes.
Okay. So
the biblical context in the Bible about the 12 sons of Jacob,
mm-hmm.
tribes of Israel.
So two things I'll put here for you. First off, is that the one with the black around the border, that's supposed to ward off Satan?
Oh, no, definitely not. There's a lot of different interpretations of what they're saying about that flag from different sources. But everything that's we're dealing with is parallel to what's in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. But that doesn't answer the question.
Everything in legislation is a mirror image of what's in the Bible.
Okay.
And everything that's been done is directly out of the Bible.
So from your point of view, what's the significance of the black?
The black is just representing, representing night and day. Where does the sun rise first?
Mm-hmm.
New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So where the timeline, if you imagine, there's a place up north there at Matauri Bay. That's where the Sir Doug Myers and the Robinsons have land there, where the first ray hits New Zealand. That's their island in the sun. We're talking about the Jewish bankers here in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
The Myers and the Robinsons, Jewish bankers.
Yeah.
So at Matauri Bay there is where the first ray that comes over the horizon every day, the first ray hits there, not down in Gisborne. So what's the significance of the first ray of the sun? Well, you capture that, you capture everything in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So that passes through different, quite a few locations, even New South Wales here, they talk about the first ray of the sun, and through Fiji, but that's where it comes to there. Now, representing night and day, the timeline, on one side of the line, you got day, and on one side, you got night.
Yep.
Day and night. Timeline separated. So, when you look at the Gregorian calendar and how man has manipulated time, and you go back to the original time, which is lunar cycles, 28 days of the month, 13 months 364 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's natural time. That's real time. Gregorian calendar, you end up with an extra day. And you've got to make an adjustment every 4 years. And all the months are all odd numbers.
Mm.
How's that representing the flag?
Now, what they've done is they've broken that one day down and they've created a window on each side of the timeline. It's called insider trading. You knew what was going to happen tomorrow because you did it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
See how important a timeline is
Mm-hmm.
to controlling the whole world? That's how they've always had the leverage over everything that's been traded. Insider trading. They've broken one day, spread it over the whole year, and created a window on each side of the timeline.
We're both
That's what's so important about New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Now,
so is New Zealand ever going to unite and maybe unite both flags?
well, the third flag
Oh, that's
is the
another
uniting
one.
of those two flags. The
Right.
third flag was the same configuration, but it only had a 5-pointer star, which represents the House of David.
Mm-hmm.
House of David, 12 tribes of Israel.
Well,
That's what those three flags represent.
well, can I put something to you that came to me after speaking with yourself and was speaking with Andy Devine, and I've had a conversation with John Wanoa as well, which has kept me busy along the way. And this is just a concept that I had. But for a true people's flag that combines everybody, I had one flagpole with both flags on it, combined, and on the top of the flagpole was the crown.
Yes.
And that represents us as a supreme power over all the fictions that exist.
Yes.
So I just want to put that to you, that was a concept that I had. So
We're getting it.
we're getting there. So that's not a fanciful concept then?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Okay.
What people don't realize is that what was established here united everyone, regardless whether they're divided today or not.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to try and do is, because I see that there's still a division of North and South in New Zealand, and if we can bridge that division, I think that's going to help the whole world. So, and you're going to help me do it.
Well, definitely.
Okay. So we're going to look at doing it.
Very good.
Because the biggest problem we've got in this country is unity, and New Zealand needs to lead the way and show how it's done. And then we can follow suit over here. And you got the intelligence to do it. Do you have the desire?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Good. And I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but I do that a little. And
Well,
I really appreciate it. I'm sorry.
Because of my ancestors' participation in that instrument, I'm actually obligated.
Okay. Well, we'll help you with that obligation. And I want to acknowledge you for coming here to share your knowledge with us. And it's so much to take in. We've got so much information to search through. But I think giving us the secret of the local councils, that's something that's really a different thing to work on, because we can see them. And it's just down there. And we've got enough people to surround them. If, like, you know, it seems to me as an achievable sort of thing. And there'll be some communities that it's much more achievable straight off. So I'm going to free you from the obligation you have of teaching us further this evening. And thank you once again, and Jane as well, for coming along. And hopefully we will see you again soon. Did you want to make this a regular thing? I know there's a lot of people drawing on your time.
Yeah.
Yes?
This is good. Need Australia is over the relationship we need to create joinder.
Yep.
The consent's here, the action's over there.
Okay, so we can have a conversation about what we can do about that. We've got to get more people up to speed, but we'll have a conversation about what we can do. But what I'm sensing is already there's people from more countries participating with each other in coming to some sort of solution, and that is definitely what we need. So this has just been a wonderful experience. I want to thank you very much. And with that,
I'm going to leave everyone, and I'd just like to say thank you for listening, and just read all that information that we posted, especially that blueprint. So I'll leave now, and it's 12 a.m.
Yep, no worries, mate.
Okay.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Crown.